This video is designed for A-level students. It will take you through the key points about how to plan a revision program. I'm recording it in particular for Year 12 examinations and in particular for the history students that I teach. But it will be hopefully universal and can be used by other students as well. Always useful there, the first slide you'll see that there is a countdown clock, 45 days to go. That is what it is for your examination. They begin on the 21st of May. It's 45 days from the date that I am recording this video. One of the best bits of advice I've always given is take a tape measure, count off, in this case, 45 centimetres, pin it to your wall, and each day cut a centimetre off. You do need to sort of have an awareness of that ticking clock. You need 45 days to do your revision because you have a huge amount of material to learn, and each day that you delay the process, the problem gets bigger. So having a countdown clock is useful advice. Okay, let's move on to the first slide. Simply rereading or highlighting material is not effective revision. Full stop. Cannot emphasize that strongly enough. In fact, I emphasize it so strongly you'll see this slide repeated all the way through the video. That is passive. You may think that you are remembering. You may think that you're committing the information to long-term memory by rereading and highlighting, but you are not. You need to be active. You need to be doing something actively with the material. If you're going to commit it to long-term memory, you need to process the material. So a very, very common mistake that students make is simply revise passively. Do not do that. Simple, full stop. So what is not effective revision? You'll see that point about passive reading is in there. So the following are signs of ineffective revision. You don't have a detailed plan, which is what I'll take you through in the next few slides. You'll put off today what you think you can do tomorrow. Very, very common. Starting late, finishing late, no planned breaks. Again, we'll come on to positive strategies there. But one of the best bits of advice, certainly in the holidays and in weekends, is to be at your desk by 9 o'clock. Revising topics that take your mood at that time. Again, that kind of like links into no detailed plan. Revising by reading and highlighting, even worse, reading the textbook, I've already said. And all of those things, if you're doing those, you're likely to be anxious. It's a sure sign. You don't seem to be getting anywhere. So you need to have a detailed plan. Let's move on. As I said, you keep seeing that. There's actually an underlying message there. One of the key points about how to revise effectively, which we'll touch on in a few minutes, is you have to revisit and revisit and revisit. So the fact that I am putting this simple message at several points in this video is, in a sense, revisiting. It is helping commit that message to your long-term memory. Let's move on. Okay, so the essentials. From now on, prioritise revision above all other commitments. Okay, paid work is an issue. Certainly, when we when we're speaking to Year 13 students and preparing for the final examinations, really you cannot allow paid work to get in the way of revision. In the long term, in the big picture, in terms of your whole future, decent A-level results, good A-level results, the best A-level results, and access to the best degrees will earn you tens, hundreds of thousands of pounds more than you're likely to be earning in just a few weeks build up to an A-level exam. So really, you can't allow paid work to get in the way. Assume that teachers will continue to use lessons to finish covering the specification. Well, as I say, I'm recording this one particularly for year 12, so it goes without saying normal lessons will continue. You will actually find that when you're in year 13 in a year's time, that will be pretty much the case for most teachers. Most teaching will continue through until May, certainly into term 5 of year 13. So the default setting is don't assume that you're going to have lesson time to revise. It's very useful to sort of get your head around that fact. At GCSE, you were used to teachers using lessons from Christmas onwards for revision. That isn't the case at A level. There simply isn't that time in the curriculum to do that. So don't plan for lessons to be revision. To be honest, it doesn't work anyway. In my view, revision is very much a personal experience done by you outside lessons. Revision is not done by teachers for you. Okay, revision is you driving the process. So don't count on revision lessons. Once the school day finishes, your minimum aim should be to spend 3 hours revising each evening. Well, as I record this video, it is the Easter holidays, but when you return the week after next, you've got about 5 or 6 weeks. On school days, you should really be aiming to spend 3 hours revising each evening. And you have to work that around your normal homework, because normal homework will be continuing as well. You are going to be busy. So across the Easter break, and it is now the Easter break that I'm recording this, you really should be aiming to put in a minimum of 6 hours per day. If you actually think about how much work you have completed since you started your A-levels in September, and you think, well, you've got 45 days to go until the start of your year 12 exams, you will realise that you can't afford, in a way, to spend less than 6 hours a day, because you've got so much to revise, especially if you're going to revise it effectively. 6 hours sounds a lot, but actually that's a normal school day. You think about it, a normal school day, you've got 5 lessons, and you've got form time, and then you go home and you do study after that. So 6 hours per day is actually quite manageable. It is the same as what a working person does in a job. So very, very manageable. In fact, working people in jobs will do more than 6 hours work per day. They will do 7 or 8 hours per day. Okay, so three pegs to hang our ideas on. Okay, the 3 things that should be happening. Effective revision should be 1, targeted, 2, comprehensive, 3, purposeful. And that requires careful and detailed planning, and really emphasize that word detailed. You can't start revising until you have a detailed revision plan, and that will take time. Let's start then with the targeted. Means that you're able to identify areas of weakness that you need to prioritize. So you can make revision targeted by doing the following. Know precisely what areas of the course you will be examined on. You need a copy of the specification. You need past papers. I know you don't have many of those because, or certainly for most A-levels now, they are into the second year of the reformed A-levels, so there is only the 2017 past papers, although you do have specimen papers, and you do have mark schemes and examiner reports for 2017. For a minority of A-levels, there are still the old A-levels. which of course will have past papers, but that is a very distinctive minority now for your particular year. But you've really got to make sure you can access as many past papers as possible, and the mark schemes, indicative content, and so on and so forth. And your teacher should be able to provide you with those. And if they haven't, then you need to actively seek them out, and don't wait for your teacher to give them to you. As your history teacher, I, of course, have given you full access to everything you need, and I would expect you to email me if you didn't know how to access them. Then, PLCs, personalised learning checklists. Okay, detailed checklists. You should have checklists of all the topics. I've given those to you as your history teacher. You know that there's something like 70 odd topics that could be examined, and we have covered about a third of them to date, which you have a checklist for. Questions you need to practice. Well, again, you know, as your history teacher, I've given you a checklist of 91 possible essay questions. Now, obviously, we're only a third of the way through this course, so you're concentrating on those pages for the sections that we have covered, but you do need to be using those questions. Red, amber, green rate, RAG rate items on your checklists. So you are RAG rating the checklists of the topics that you studied, you're RAG rating the questions you need, the essay questions that you could be asked. And then spend more time revising things that are red or amber. Okay, get out of your comfort zone. There is a natural temptation to spend more time revising the areas you feel most comfortable with, but you know that is not the most productive time, because the questions that you are least comfortable with, the topics you are least comfortable with, you know are most likely then to be on the exam paper. So you've got to give more time to the red and the amber. And then you've got to prioritise that, you've got to plan it, you've got to work with the red and amber items, spend more time on those items, because you need more time to reprocess the information, and you therefore need to revisit the red and amber items more often. Same point. Keep thinking about that. The second area then is comprehensive. Okay, so comprehensive means that you cover all the content that is mentioned on the specification for your subject. So you make revision comprehensive by ensure that each topic mentioned on the specification is included on your timetable a number of times in a spaced way. Now, as I said, this video, all the examples I am pitching at myself as a history teacher for my Year 12 history group, but it is universal. This video could be used for any subject, but using the example of history. Okay, so let's imagine, choose a topic that we have done since the start of the course. Just pick any particular topic, let's say the Kulturkampf. Okay, we did that fairly early on in our course, Bismarck's Kulturkampf. We spent an hour on that lesson. We had an hour lesson on that topic. You had, 3 sides of class notes that I gave to you, 3 A4 sides typed notes, information, plus you've got any additional notes that you have made from your stretch reading. So you need a substantial amount of time to process that and to commit that information to memory. So clearly you cannot just sit down and revise the Kulturkampf, let's say tomorrow, which would be the 7th of April, because by the time, no matter how well you revise it, by the time you get, let's just say for argument's sake, the history exam is on the 21st of May, Well, that is about 7 weeks have passed. You will have forgotten the cult to camp by then. So clearly, no matter how well you revise it, say on the 7th of April, you have got to then plan ideally 3 more occasions when you will revisit that particular topic. Now, you don't need to spend an hour on it each time. It could be half an hour, it could be 15 minutes, but you do need to plan to visit each topic ideally 4 times. That's the first time plus 3 additional times. And they should be spaced over the 6 or 7 week revision program. That needs planning. Okay, so whatever the topic, a number of times throughout your revision rather than massing all the revision together at any one point. So you need to have a plan that leaves gaps between when topic A is studied. That needs to be planned. That's an example of a planning grid. You may want to adapt that, use it for a school week because you're at school during the day. Let's say, for argument's sake, you get home at 4 o'clock. So as you can see, you've built in 4 blocks of time. From 4 o'clock until 4:45, you take a 15-minute break, then another 45 minutes. You then take an hour and 15 minutes breaks, and you've then got another 45 minutes until 7:45, and then you do a final 45 minutes, finishing at 8:45. So if you therefore were to plan, say, 45 minutes for each topic, you could revise 4 topics each evening, times each day of the week. I would honestly say don't bother with Friday. It's always nice to have Friday off, but let's say times 4 days, that's 16 topics covered just in the evening. Now, you've obviously got 3 A-levels to do. Some of you do 4 A-levels. You've got multiple topics or different papers for each A-level, so you've got a lot of topics to map out. You may decide to actually split each of these into 2 blocks. You don't need to spend 45 minutes on each topic. You may decide to do 20 minutes on a topic, 5-minute break, and then another 20 minutes, followed by a 15-minute break. But notice the key thing is that however you plan it, you're building in lots and lots of breaks all the way through. A break after each topic, a break for your dinner, and then you're finishing at a reasonable time, so you've got wind down time before you go to bed, so you sleep well. That's the basic principle of planning a revision schedule. And notice you start early. To be able to do that and to be able to cover the topics, you really have got to be disciplined to be at your desk as soon as you possibly can. Now, you've got to build this timetable around your other commitments. Okay, you may have an arrangement to pick a younger brother or sister up from school or something like that. Who knows? But you've got to plan it. And the most important thing is you're planning in your breaks, because if you don't plan in breaks, you will not revise effectively when you do sit at your desk, because you will get bored easily. Whereas if you know a break is coming up, you will be productive when you do actually sit down and revise. Very, very important. Now, of course, much of the time you're not at school, weekends and holidays. Okay, so at the moment you're in the Easter holidays, week beginning Monday, the 2nd of April. The date I'm recording this is actually Thursday, the 5th of April. Time is ticking away. So devise your own grid and put your own times in, but exactly the same principle. Build in timed breaks, and the same principle, start as early as possible each day. And I would honestly say start at 9 o'clock each day and finish at 6 each day. So no matter how many blocks you build into the day, have lots of short breaks, that they are timetabled and aim to finish at 6. So you've got the evening free to wind down, and you will then genuinely enjoy the evening because you have spent 6 hours revising. And that's 6 hours not counting the breaks, okay, which is why you need to start at 9 o'clock. Treat it like a working day. Basic point. And if you do that every single day, I would then say take one day off at the end of the week. You don't need to do that every single day over the whole of the holidays. And of course, you then use the same sort of timetable at weekends once you're back in school. There's next week. So map your revision topics for all your subjects into those study periods. So obviously for my particular history unit, which is Germany 1871 to 1990, you've got to map all the topics that we've covered so far. Around about 25, 26, 27 topics, I can't remember exactly, but you've got to map those topics into the grids, but you've also got to plan revisiting each one 3 or 4 times so that you are processing and committing it to long-term memory. Remember, you cannot just visit each topic once. You may think you remember it, but you will forget it. So you've got to revisit it. This is an example of a spaced timetable. I just found it from the internet. Okay, but it works reasonably well. I would slightly change it. As you can see, this particular student, A-level student, is doing is studying science, RE, English, and maths. But notice how they've color coded their timetable. So obviously they've got word processing skills, or whether it's done on Excel, I'm not sure. But they've used different colors. So the science is in sort of burgundy color. RE is in green, etc., etc. But what you can see here is evidence of spacing. So there, Swinburne, Credulity and Testimony is revisited. You've got algorithms there being revisited. Okay, you've got features of carbonyl compounds being revisited. It's not perfect. The revisiting is fairly soon. Remember, we talk about spacing the revision. The space needs to be reasonably well spaced out. So if you're visiting, if you're planning to revisit a topic in total 4 times over, let's say, 8 weeks of revision, then the space would be on average every 2 weeks between each topic. The thing I would do slightly differently is, let's say, Swinburne Credulity, that's number 1. I'd actually write 1 onto my timetable, and I'd write 2 onto my timetable. Features of carbonyl compounds, the first time you visit it, write 1. The second time you visit it, write 2. And then 3 and 4. Okay, so you've actually got a record of when you're revisiting it, so you know that you are going back to it for the 2nd or 3rd or 4th time. There we are, more revisiting. Hopefully that message is being now committed to your long-term memory. Okay, so the first was targeted, the second was comprehensive. Now we're talking about purposeful revision. So this is about when you actually do sit down at your desk, and let's say you plan to spend 20 minutes revising the war on site crisis. Okay, and it's your first or second or third or fourth visit to that particular topic. What is meaningful revision? You need to transfer your knowledge to your long-term memory. And what we've said, remember, what does not work is just simply rereading notes or highlighting notes or highlighting the textbook. That does not commit to long-term memory. Now, yes, the first time you visit the topic, you do obviously have to read it, and you may find it useful to highlight as you go through. But that in itself will not commit it to long-term memory. To make your revision genuinely purposeful, you're revisiting it to familiarize yourself, and your revisiting of the content. So in particular, the second, the third, and the fourth visit must be challenging. It cannot be simply be rereading or highlighting the material. Yes, the first time you visit it, you have to do that. But for the second, third, and fourth, you have got to be challenging yourself. So that means doing different things. So it means making yourself write summary notes, for example. It means mind mapping the information. It means labeling diagrams. It means drawing timelines, and so on. That is not a definite list. You're processing that information. So you put your notes to one side so you can't see them, and you make yourself write things down as Cornell notes or as mind mapped notes. You do something with that information to challenge yourself to recall what you have already read. That's really important. Then in the next time you visit, do something else, okay? Give yourself a knowledge test. Maybe one of the best things is what I'm doing here, to really process is talk it through, make a recording, talk through an essay plan, make a recording. You could use a PowerPoint to put questions or to record questions. You could use Quizlets, online Quizlets, etc., to test your detailed knowledge. And then ultimately, certainly when you get to revisit the third visit and absolutely the fourth visit, you then have got to be testing your recall by actually practicing writing exam style questions. Now, the ultimate, let's say for a subject like history, which is what I'm teaching you, the most effective way is to try to write an essay in a proper timed situation, 45 minutes, write yourself that essay. You admittedly will not have time to do that for all the essay questions you could be asked. So for some of them, it's just making yourself write a plan to that essay, but you've got to build that into your planning, on the third or fourth visit of a topic, you are actually you're putting yourself into the same situation as if you were in that exam room, because you know you're going to be in that exam room, in that situation, looking at a question with a blank sheet of paper in front of you and a pen in your hand and the clock ticking to write an answer. You know you're going to be there. So put yourself into that situation while you're at home, sitting at your desk in one of your revision slots. Make yourself do that. Okay, that is ultimately what it is all about. So, what next? Little checklist. If you haven't started your revision, do not start your revision until you have written a list of your topics and your exam style questions. Now, I know you have got those from me as your teacher of German history 1871 to 1990. Hopefully you have got them from your other teachers. If you haven't, then you need to basically get those lists. Don't wait for the teacher to give them to you. Write them yourself, email your teacher, but you need to get onto it. Ultimately, it is your responsibility to do that. Your responsibility. You are a young adult and all the information is there for you. When you've got the lists, work your way through, rag rate every item on your list. Then design and print off planning grids and write your topics into the schedule. And that will take time. It will take you several hours. So that whole process there, if you haven't yet done that, it will probably take you at least one day, probably 2 days to do that. Okay, that takes work to do that. And only then, when you have done that, when you've reached that point, are you in a position to start your detailed revision. So you begin your revision program once you've got your plan in place. Your teachers are there to support. Even though you're at home in the holidays, you can email me as your history teacher I'm having a short break in the next few days. I'm not around this weekend, but I will be checking my emails for most of the holidays. I am in a position to respond. Don't assume that your teachers will be able to respond in the holidays, but you know your teachers are there to help, so use your teachers. Just going to finish off. These are a few words from the ex-head of Harrow School. They were published in the newspapers last month. Harrow School is one of the most successful private schools in the country. Now, I am the last person in the world who quotes from private education. I'm not a great believer in private education, but there's no doubt about it. Harrow School is a very successful school, and the ex-head of Harrow School has got a lot of experience. And when I read this article in the newspaper and I read his words, I thought, yes, what he is saying, I absolutely agree with it. Okay, it makes complete sense. So I'm not going to read this to you. You can play the video and pause, but I'm just going to just move through the slides and you can have a read through his words, which pretty much reinforce the points that I have made all the way through. That's it. I hope this video was useful to you. Available on YouTube. Thank you very much.